Now, while everything is calm right now, there's a lot of concerning stuff coming NLE Choppa's way as his court case is now about to start. Here's how NLE Choppa will be getting sentenced to a very lengthy time in prison. Now the day, it starts in Florida on March 28th. Rapper NLE Choppa, alongside two other friends named Zyron Matlock and Thony Coleman, were all arrested on 3 charges. These charges were burglary, carrying a concealed firearm, as well as carrying narcotics. Now obviously, these are very concerning charges. Allegedly, NLE Choppa is actually looking at around 10 years in prison for this. But you're probably wondering, how did this all even happen? And well, let's get straight into it. Now on the night of March 28th, NLE Choppa and his 2 friends Zyron Matlock and Thony Coleman were all out on the hunt trying to retrieve a watch that was inside of a vehicle that was actually towed a few days prior. This watch, knowing NLE Choppa, was probably some sort of bust down Rolex, some sort of AP, and allegedly it was in the glove compartment of the vehicle. NLE Choppa and his 2 friends, they were wearing very dark clothing alongside ski masks and gloves. Not to mention they were also carrying firearms and narcotics, which is just a recipe for disaster when you add it all together. Now on camera, NLE Choppa and Matlock were caught hopping the fence and entering the tow yard where the vehicle allegedly was parked. They ended up scanning it through, looking for the car that was towed. Sadly, they had no luck finding it, and that's because, funny enough, the car that they were looking for was actually in a different tow yard that was down the street. Now NLE Choppa and Matlock, they started hopping the fence again to get back to their vehicle, but in the process, they end up tripping the motion detective lights in the lot. Now when these are tripped, it immediately calls police to the location, as it's very common for burglars to hop tow yard fences, hotwire vehicles, and drive them through the fence and get out of the lot. It's very common, so they actually have these at all tow yards. Now NLE Choppa and Matlock, they quickly entered their 2019 Ford Expedition, but police were able to arrive to the scene very fast as a conducted felony traffic stop was committed while trying to exit the scene. Now while the law enforcement were talking to them, they actually asked the 3 men inside the vehicle to step out of the car. In the process of them getting out of the vehicle, their firearms were actually sitting directly out in the open as they were sitting on them to hide from law enforcement. When exiting the vehicle, the firearms could be seen on the top of the back seat. Now this quickly alerted law enforcement, and they immediately arrested NLE Choppa and his 2 friends for carrying firearms and not making it clear to law enforcement at the scene that they actually had them. So during the search of the SUV, NLE Choppa actually had a backpack allegedly in the vehicle, and it was containing substances on the inside. This is obviously going to add another charge to the list, and that will make it everything worse. To even make more things worse, neither of the 3 men had a valid concealed carrying firearm permit or were even the age of 21. Now NLE Choppa, Coleman, and Matlock, they were arrested at the scene very fast, and then they were taken into Broward County Jail, where weirdly enough is actually the same place where YNW Melly is still being held. It hasn't been confirmed if they were actually in the same cell block, but that would be pretty cool. Now later on that next day, NLE Choppa was actually released on $4,500 bond, as he will await the trial of charges of burglary, carrying a concealed firearm without having a license, and having narcotics. Now it has been said that due to them wearing ski masks, dark clothing, and having firearms, they want to know what the real motive was that night, as you do not need all of that equipment just to get a watch from a tow yard, especially a firearm. So while the law enforcement does their investigation before the trial starts, they're actually trying to figure out the real motive for this incident. as law enforcement needs to make sure that it wasn't just them wanting to grab the watch out of the vehicle and nothing more. It's pretty weird how trying to rob a watch out of a vehicle that's in a glove box, you do not need a face mask, gloves, and a firearm. So if they were carrying the firearm hopping the fence and said worker at the tow yard came out to try to stop them, would that firearm have been used? Now hopefully law enforcement figures out that the motive was nothing to do with that. But NLE Choppa is still looking at a pretty severe sentence, so due to NLE Choppa's priors record, it has been said on social media by famous rap lawyers that allegedly NLE Choppa, he could be looking at 1 to 3 years in prison for this incident. Hopefully, NLE Choppa's boys that were with him that night will actually take a bit more of the charges. That way NLE Choppa will be released earlier for a small price. This actually tends to happen a lot with rappers, so I wouldn't be surprised if this happens. But NLE Choppa would have a very hard time while in prison. I wish the absolute best for him, but the way things are going as of right now, a lot of these prisoners are going to see this young rapper coming into jail, and due to his social media following and net worth, a lot of these prisoners are they're not going to take it lightly, especially since Choppa has permanent diamond teeth in. They're going to want to use NLE Choppa for commissary goods, putting money on their books, better clothing, all kinds of things like that. You'd be surprised what people that have absolutely nothing to lose would do for even just a honey bun treat while on the inside of prison. So this is basically all going to come down to who was sitting on the firearm in the back seat, who had the bag with narcotics on the inside. I don't think that his boys are going to allow NLE Choppa to take either of these charges, but we still got to figure out who is actually sitting on the firearm inside of the vehicle. And if this case is anything like the NBA Youngboy case, then it's going to be pretty clear that law enforcement will not want NLE Choppa out in the public the same way that NBA Youngboy is being treated. Law enforcement told NBA Youngboy that he is not allowed to be released and that they want him to have a prison sentence to finally teach him a lesson for all of his wrongdoings. Now NLE Choppa has very serious charges against him right now: burglary, firearms, and possession of substances, but it's going to be interesting to see how this all goes down. If you are new to the channel and want to stay up to date on what will happen, all you have to do is hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to leave a like on the video. It helps out a lot more than you might think. Anyways, if you support NLE Choppa, leave a comment saying you support him. I know if he ever watched this video one day, he would love that. But anyways, I'm out. Peace.